Today in media conference with Lal Goyal, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to bring to you the current topics. And today the current topic is physical education and sports in New Education Policy 2020. Before I will start, today is the day of International Day for the remembrance of the slave trade and its abolition. Today, this day of International Day for the remembrance of the slave trade and its abolition is celebrated on August 23rd of each year, the day designated by UNESCO to memorialize the transatlantic slave trade. The Atlantic slave trade, transatlantic slave trade or Euro-American slave trade involved the transportation by slave traders of enslaved African people mainly to the Americas. The slave trade regularly used the triangular trade route and its middle passage and existed from the 16th to 19th century. Today we are lucky that we are not having any such type of evil in the world. And now about today's topic, which is physical education and sports in NEP, that is New Education Policy 2020. Physical education, also known as PE and in some countries as physical training or PT, is a class that pupils are required to take at a school. It is taken during primary and secondary education. In addition, physical literacy is a 21st century term that first emerged in the sport literature before also being applied to physical education. The concept of physical literacy covers a variety of conditions for a student, whether it's motivation, confidence, physical competence, knowledge and understanding for a student. Teachers implement these different concepts into their lesson plans to teach and develop students accordingly and appropriately for their individual success and education. Whether the class produces positive effects on students' health, behavior, and academic performance depends upon the kind of program that is taught. Physical education programs vary all over the world. However, there are worldwide organizations that allow for a better understanding on how much exercise a child should be getting daily. Popular games in PE includes football, netball, hockey, rounders, athletics, and cricket. Harry Crow Blackbuck was an American college sports coach and physical education instructor. He founded the YMCA College of Physical Education at Madras, now Chennai, in 1920, which played a key role in promoting sports and in establishing the Olympic movement in India. For many students, school organized sports play an important role in their academic and social experiences. Every school has sports embedded in their curriculum as they understand the importance of physical health and activity. However, the importance given to sports ends there, as this inclusion is just for the sake of a formality. Under the Khelo India scheme, the government is supporting the development of sports at the grassroots levels through the initiatives such as Khelo India Schools Games. This program has been introduced to revive the sports culture in India at the grassroots levels by building a strong framework for all sports played in the country and with the aim to establish India as a great sporting country. The importance of adopting sports and education for the success of youth development has been recognized by the Indian government as early as 1984, when the National Sports Policy recommended making sports and physical education an integral part of the school curriculum. A national study from 2014 showed a positive association between participating in school sports and lower rates of tobacco, drugs, and alcohol use. According to PricewaterhouseCoopers PwC survey conducted on 2017, close to 60% of the respondents strongly agree that more emphasis is given to education than to sports in India. The education sector should play a crucial role in promoting sports in India. The new education policy includes several key points that are instrumental for the holistic development of a child. By eliminating the rigid separation between curricular and extracurricular activities, the NEP acknowledges sports to be equally important as any other subject like English or science, thereby increasing the fun and engagement that children desperately seek in a school. Though play, children can develop physically, mentally, and socially, which will contribute positively to academic outcomes, classroom behavior, and attendance levels. Moreover, assessment-specific reforms such as the development of the National Assessment Center and tracking of a child's progress based on learning outcomes are great initiative as they focus on the learning progress, thereby focusing on the all-round development of a child. And to discuss about the physical education and sports in New Education Policy 2020, I would like to invite my first guest, and he is Professor Dr. P. Subramania. Professor Dr. P. Subramania is the Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University. He is having more than 3 decades of experience in teaching, research, and administration. He did his MCom from Mangalore University in 1982, securing first rank with gold medal. He obtained PhD degree from Mangalore University in 1992 in the area of consumer behavior. He worked as professor, trainer, and consultant. He published 46 research papers in national and international journals of repute. He did his postdoctoral research at Nottingham Business School, Nottingham Trent University, England, on HRD policies and practices. He also did a cross-national study of India and Britain under the Commonwealth Fellowship Scheme during 2001 and 2. He received an international award entitled eLearn International Award 2003 from Scotland, UK, for his best research paper on trends and status of corporate e-learning and Indian experience. He also received the prestigious Devang Mehta National Award for Best Teacher in Human Resource Management in November 2009. He is down to earth, ready to listen, and eager to implement. Welcome, Dr. P. Subramania, on our show.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you.
Dr. P. Subramania, today we all are looking to the new education policy. As we all know, that condition of the sports in internationally, India is not getting many more medals, or except 1 or 2 sports where, yes, we are the leaders, but in other sports we are lacking, and the blame goes to the education policy. Now we would like to know the physical education and sports in new education policy. Professor Dr. P. Subramania, please.
Yeah, good morning to all of you. As you have rightly pointed out, in the Indian context, so far, physical education, sports, play, and all those things got only stepmotherly treatment. That's why we could not achieve the intended progress as far as the domain of physical education and sports is concerned. But sure, now National Education Policy 2020 is holding brilliant promises, because the main focus of this new education policy, as you say rightly, is holistic education through sports and play. It means the main focus is on learning outcomes, competencies, and subject integration. When you say subject integration, the policy says through arts integrated, sports integrated, ICT integrated, and storytelling based pedagogy, among others, as standard pedagogy. So it means sports science has been given a lot of importance in National Education Policy 2020, and it also further says no silos among subjects or learning processes. It means no hard separation between curricular, co-curricular, or extracurricular activities, academic or vocational, science or humanities, sports, art, academics. It means national education policy has already created a kind of level playing field, no discrimination, a kind of equity, and a kind of level playing field for both sports and academic activities. And moreover, the main essence of National Education Policy 2020 is holistic development of children, which will benefit from the focus on balanced and all-round development from an early age, because we got two broad categories: school system of education and higher education system. The national education policy is a welcome change at a time when the health, happiness, and immunity of children are becoming increasingly important due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, eliminating the rigid separation between curricular and extracurricular activities, as you rightly pointed out, the National Education Policy 2020 truly acknowledges sports to be equally important as any other subject like English or science, or thereby increasing the fun and engagement that children desperately seek in a school. That is what rightly observed by you. The most important aspect of sport is having fun, with the added bonus of maintaining a good what you call fitness level. According to me, physical education is training in the development of and care for the human body. It stresses athletics. It includes hygiene also. It's a taught course taken during primary and secondary education that encourages psychomotor learning in a play or movement exploration setting. Physical education classes should be compulsory in school until approximately the age of 16. And it should also focus on learning basic sporting skills. The curriculum should also pay attention to health and fitness today. Therefore, that is what the national education policy is giving a lot of importance to. For example, mandatory for students to acquire skills in health and nutrition, physical education, fitness, wellness, and sports. That is what the dictum runs. And health checkups, annual health checkup for all students. That is what the major expectation from National Education Policy 2020. And reduce weight of school bags. It means every day there will not be teaching sessions within the four walls. They should look beyond the four walls. It means physical education activities outside, on the playground, or indoor activities. It means reduced weight of school bags and textbooks through suitable changes in curriculum and pedagogy. Basic training in preventive health care, mental health, first aid, personal and public hygiene will be included in the curriculum as per National Education Policy 2020. Some counselors and teachers will be trained in this art. So children with a disability should be focused very well, because they will experience different kind of barriers. And a caring and inclusive culture at school will be created in order to create, build, nurture, and sustain this kind of positive academic ambience for physical education, sports, and other activities. That's what my initial remarks.
Thank you, Professor Dr. P. Subramania. And according to Dr. Subramania, this National Education Policy 2020 is emphasizing now on the sports or the physical education more than the previous one. And he says because there's a holistic view that has been taken, and in that it is very clear that the physical education or the sports will be giving more importance. And according to him, because it is mentioned in the National Education Policy that the weight of the school bags has to be reduced, it clearly means that they will be having new curriculum, which will definitely includes the physical education as well as the sports. Then only the weight of the school bags can be reduced, or the students need not to carry so many books to the school. And according to him, the sports not only give the physical fitness, but it also teaches about the hygiene, as well as it increases the immunity, which is very much required during this COVID-19 time. So thank you very much, Professor Dr. Subramania, for giving your opening remarks. Now I would like to go to our next guest. Now our next guest is Wing Commander Ajit Ghosh, retired. Wing Commander Ajit Ghosh is the former Ranji Trophy cricketer. He served in the Indian Air Force for 24 years. He commanded 4 Air Force units, holding sensitive appointments at top of the line fighter bases close to the Indian border, both in the Northeast and in the Western Desert. He is qualified coach from the BCCI National Cricket Academy and a BCCI match referee for domestic matches. He is former Secretary, Air Force Sports Board. He was closely associated with the conduct of elite sports events like the Military World Games and Commonwealth Games as Chief of Mission of Indian Armed Forces Sports Contingent at Military World Championship overseas. He was the Asian representative on jury of appeal drawn from the 4 continents at Military World Championships. He was the chief operating officer of one of the biggest and best boarding schools of the country, where he also headed an academy of sporting excellence for young children with 35 trained sports coaches, including foreign coaches. His achievements are: he played 5 seasons of Ranji Trophy between 1987-88 and 94-95, one amongst a handful of brothers who hold an international record of having scored hundreds together in the same inning of a first-class match. He captained the Indian Air Force cricket team. He represented the East Zone University team in the Vizzy. He recently wrote in one leading English magazine about new education policy, overlooks opportunities and possibilities that sports present to students. I quote, "The foundation to all this could be laid by the new education policy if only it were to recognize the limitless possibilities and opportunities that sports present as a learning and teaching tool. It is time our educationists woke up to the realization that their views of education as a stern intellectual discipline may need some course correction. Only then would traditional mindset change and the benefits from all educational streams occur in equal measure to our future generations and create a new and vibrant India," unquote. Welcome, Wing Commander Ajit Ghosh on our show. Wing Commander Ghosh, you have heard what Vice Chancellor, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. P. Subramania said. He is very positive about the National Education Policy 2020 as far as the physical education and sports are concerned. And he has also mentioned that this policy definitely give boost to the physical education and sports. But you have written an article in a reputed English magazine in which you have asked that there should be a course correction in this new policy and it should give more emphasis on the sports and the physical education. Now, we would like to know the physical education and sports in NEP 2020 by Wing Commander Ajit Ghosh, please.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And I fully concur with Dr. Subramania on the importance that is being placed on physical education and sports as subjects in the new education policy 2020. Now, having said that, my point of view is slightly different. I do not look at sports purely from the subject point of view as an academic, as part of the academic curriculum. I would rather look at sports as a personality development tool, which we have at our disposal, and it's something which is easily available, and it is something which everyone would like to utilize. If you were to walk into a classroom and say, ask as to how many children actually love sports or are interested in sports, I'm sure you'll find that 99% of the hands will go up. So if that is the level of interest in sports, why are we not talking about sports, using sports as a personality development tool? Because sports is so much more than just playing. It is most people confuse sports with, an expression of physical prowess. It is not. It is much more beyond that, because first and foremost, sports builds your mental capabilities. Because when you play sport, you learn so many life skills, which are, easily accessible, easily available to everyone who plays sports. Skills like team spirit. If you're playing a team game, your team always comes first. Your friends come first. So that's the first lesson that you learn on a sports ground, to put yourself, your own self-interest behind others, to subordinate your self-interest to the interest of the team. So that's a wonderful lesson to learn for a young child, because ultimately when he grows up, when he leads an organization, when he's in a position where he's actually shaping the future of the country, his own self-interest, and this again, from my own background as a military officer, this is something that we are taught at our academies, at the training academies. Where one of the first things that we learn is that the welfare, the safety of the people whom we lead as officers comes first and every time, foremost every time. And our own safety, our own welfare, that is last and each and every time. So that's something which is taught to us in the military academies as part of the training. But the same thing is taught to a young child just by playing a team sport. So my humble submission in that article which I wrote to the nation was, let us look beyond, look at sports beyond just as a subject. Let us not confuse sports with merely physical education. Let us look at it as a personality development tool. Let us look at it as a means that we have at our disposal for holistic education, for holistic development of a child. And mind you, holistic development, holistic education is not new to India. It's not something within NEP 2020 has said. It is something which was started 100 years ago by Rabindranath Tagore when he built Vishwabharati University. He looked at holistic education there. He concentrated on the development of the personality of the individual. And ultimately, what is an education policy? What are we trying to achieve out of educating a person? We are trying to build a balanced individual who can take his own decisions correctly. He can think logically. He can think on his feet when faced with difficult situations, with different changing situations. Someone who can cooperate with others, who can be a part of a team. Somebody who can accept that many times in life things will not go right, that you will fail, and unless you're somebody like Roger Federer, you'll probably lose 9 times out of 10. So all these things ultimately make you mentally strong, because if you're out first ball in a match one day, but you still go back to the ground the next day, because you believe, you have that self-belief in yourself that you can achieve, you can succeed tomorrow, even though you failed today. And so if you fall today, you would get up and go back to the ground tomorrow. And this is something which sports teaches. And ultimately, this is self-belief. And we need people who are confident. We need people who have this kind of self-belief in building the India of tomorrow. So that is where the importance of playing sport comes in. And that is where exposing every child to sports, especially in the formative years at school. As Dr. Subramania mentioned, maybe till the age of 16. Let's make sports compulsory. Let it not just remain a subject. Let it not degenerate into physical education where we just do a couple of exercises on a sports field, which most of us hate. Even though I played sports all my life, I don't like doing physical education exercises. Given a chance, I would probably, not do it. So why not we try to do something which we love doing? So if 99% of the children in a classroom raise their hands, when you ask them that do you want to play sports, let us make them play sport. Let us not concentrate only on physical education. Let us not relegate sports to just being a subject in the curriculum. Let it not become a physical education subject which is to be taught and to memorize certain things and rattle it out in an examination paper and get the score marks, because that is what education in our country has currently degenerated into. It is just a mindless pursuit of marks and degrees without any concentration on the development of the individual. So this is where sports is going to play a tremendously important role in shaping the India of tomorrow. And I'm sorry to say that I've listened to a lot of discussions, a lot of very learned people talking about the sports policy, the education policy, but not one of them has yet spoken about this particular aspect of sports. We all talk about sports as a subject. We say that the NEP has given so much of importance to it, it has included it into the curriculum, fine. All that is very, very good. But let us also look at the benefits of sports as a human personality development tool. Let us create well-rounded, confident individuals who can think for themselves, who can handle failure, who can handle stress. After every CBSE examination today, after every competitive examination results today, you read in the newspapers of suicides of the children who failed to clear those examinations. Now, if I were to give you an example from sports, something which happened just yesterday, in this test match which is going on between England and Pakistan, there is a young player, 22-year-old player called Zach Crawley, who made his test debut just a few months, just about a month ago against the West Indies, in the series against West Indies. And in one of his first test matches, when his test place was anything but settled, he got out to the first ball of his innings. He went into bat and the first ball he got out on a duck, on zero. And he was dropped from the next test match. So if he was not mentally strong, if his sports education up to this point had not taught him to be mentally strong, he would have probably given up at that stage. But he did not. And when and in this test match, which he's currently playing against Pakistan, yesterday he scored 269 runs, which was the highest score by an English player in his first test match 100 in the last 116 years. So that's the kind of mental strength, that's the kind of belief, that's the kind of confidence that sports teaches to young people and young adults, young children and young adults. So we need to tap into that. We need to make use of it in this new education policy, which has so many positives, which has got all the right things, in my opinion, embedded into it. But this is one aspect of it which I find lacking, and which I would personally, I would love to see it included into the sports policy. That is what I would like to say.
Okay, thank you, Wing Commander Ghosh, for giving your views. And Wing Commander Ghosh has mentioned that although he agrees with Dr. P. Subramania that yes, there is a holistic inclusion of the sports, but according to him, he disagrees because the importance of the sports in the new national education policy is only as a subject, which is not correct. He says that it should be a practical thing and one should give the full importance to the sports. And according to Wing Commander Ghosh, if you ask in a class and ask the students whether they would like to play the sports, 99% of the students will raise their hands. So when this is the situation, why we are not giving importance, the true importance of the sports? And according to him, the purpose of education is to make somebody who can take proper decisions, who can be mentally sound, physically sound. And this is only possible if the child from the very beginning is involved in sports, because the sports create the mental as well as the physical, give the strength to the child. And that's why, and when the child grows up, he can be a very, very successful businessman or CEO, because he can take decisions with a proper mindset as well as he is physically sound. And he also mentioned that if we will not incorporate this in a proper way, then we can see how it has happened after the competitive exam. So many suicides are taking place. And he has given an example of an English player who has just debuted against the West Indies last month, where he was out on duck, and then he was thrown out from the team. But again, he was called back in the yesterday in the Pakistan test, and he made highest runs and which any of the cricketer has made, British cricketer has made in the first test for the 100 runs. That is about 260 runs, if I'm not mistaken, what I heard from Wing Commander Ghosh. So according to him, the mental strength, although sometimes there are exceptionals. We lost one very bright Indian player also recently who committed suicide because he was not included in the IPL team. But that is exceptional. Yes, if we are mentally sound, if we are physically sound, we will not take any such type of cowardly steps which can lead to the suicide. Now I would like to go. Thank you, Wing Commander Ghosh, for giving your views. Now I would like to go to our next guest. and he's Mr. Satik Roy. Mr. Satik Roy is the head of Operation Joy Root Cricket Academy and faculty, Flinders University, Adelaide, Australia. His major role is to work on the mental and emotional health and well-being of players and coaches across the globe. Mr. Satik has lived, studied, and worked across 3 continents and has a double master's in the related field. He has advocated a game sense approach for younger kids and has focused on holistic development for each individual. Welcome, Mr. Satik Roy, on our show. Mr. Roy, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Mr. Roy, you have heard what Professor Dr. P. Subramania has spoken and what Wing Commander Arjit Ghosh has spoken. According to Professor Dr. P. Subramania, this is a welcome move in this new national education policy where they have included the sports and physical education. But according to Wing Commander Arjit Ghosh, that we have included a few things, but it is not done completely, which will not serve the purpose, which according to Wing Commander Ghosh is required very badly if we really want to develop our country through the young minds, and that is children. Now we would like to know the physical education and sports in new education policy 2020. Mr. Satik Roy, please.
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me here. I carefully listened to what Mr. Ghosh said and Professor said as well. I'm in agreement with both to an extent, but I can give you examples of what happens in Australia and England, having lived here for quite a while, and my own son being here. I can give you examples of what happens, and we relate to that tremendously. Even as Asians settled here in Australia for many years, we relate to this kind of culture, the sports culture in Australia. See, first of all, here, whether it's sports, education, we are not result oriented. We are process oriented, which is very, very critical. For us, the process is most important than the result. We feel if the process goes right, the result will come, if not today, tomorrow. That's the starting point. I'll give you some statistics to start with. We have the Australian Sports Commission here, and we call it the Play Survey. They do surveys every single year. As on 2019, they found out that 75% of Australian kids are involved in some kind of organized sports outside school. And again, this is, it's not a part of the curriculum. This is initiated by the kids and the parents themselves. And this is very, very critical. The reason being is that when we come to our kids, we don't tell them, or in Australia, we don't have the cultures, which sport are you going to play? We have 6 to 7 different sports that are listed in schools, and then we choose. And the choice is different. It's very simple. All our kids, they play different sports. Now, one kid in one semester plays 3 different sports: basketball, soccer, cricket, Australian Football League, and they play it over several years. And once they play this, they don't play it for the result. They play it for the fun of it. So when my son or our community kids come back home, our parents ask, they don't ask, what did you play? They said, what did you learn and how much fun did you have? What is the fun element that you have included here? That is the most critical aspect when it comes to sports here. Now, as I was saying, that we also work on something called a game sense approach. We have, pre-kindy, kindy, year 1, year 2. We don't start off with sports immediately. What we do is we call this as a game sense approach. It's a very simple understanding of sports and physical education combined. What we do is we devise different types of games which are related to the main games. So we call that, for example, we call it invasion games. We call it target-based games. We call it field and soccer games. When these games are bifurcated, we invent mini games for the audience. So what happens is a particular child may not be playing basketball straight away, but we give them the culture of aiming. The first year, they might aim at a smaller level of the basket. Once he gets used to it, once he gets better at it, he goes to the next level. He goes from stage by stage, and then we know this child, what is he exactly good at. Having born and brought up in India, for us, cricket was pretty much the end and be all of all games. And from year one, we were told that you have to play cricket. Here, the biggest difference is what we tell them is just play all sports. It doesn't matter, what you're playing. As long as you play some kind of sports, that is most important. Even when we have parents teachers meeting, we are introduced to all the teachers, and every teacher we ask them how is their performance, whether it's history, geography, or physical education. In physical education, one of the most important aspects we look at is obesity. When the child is obese, parents and teachers sit together and they discuss that why is our child obese? Is he not eating right? How many hours of physical education is he doing? So all of these aspects are so critical, for development of a child. And when we talk of development, it's as Wing Commander rightly said, it's the holistic development, not just the physical education, not just the mental education, but emotional well-being is very, very important. And all of these together, make a complete holistic happy child. So for us, the happy quotient is very, very important. And once again, the mental aspects of the game is very critical for the development of a child. If we include these aspects, wherein not just introduce a child to different games, but introduce them step by step, in the development of every child, that will make a significant difference in his long-term growth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Satik Roy, for mentioning that he agrees with both of our earlier panelists, Professor Dr. P. Subramania and Wing Commander Ghosh, but he says there is a basic difference between the India and other countries. Although he was born and brought up in India, he says in the country like Australia, where he is staying now, his child who goes to the school, they have a choice of sports and they are playing sports, and they are playing for the fun and learning. They are not playing for the winning the games. So according to him, the process is important, not the end result. Because if your process is good, that end result will come. And he says that the main emphasis there is about the physical education and the physical activities. Whenever there is a PTA meeting, the Parents Teachers Association meeting, according to Mr. Roy, when he goes there, when they discuss about other subjects, they also discuss about the physical education. And in that, the main thing is, if the child is obese, why he's obese, whether he's not doing proper exercises or his eating habits. So all those aspects make the child very, very important. And because of that, their mental health improves. And he says that this type of corrections are required very badly. Even in India, the pressure in India is for the child is about the education, but not from the sports. So according to Mr. Roy, the sports, like in other countries where they are giving from the very beginning, not initially, but whenever the child is fit, where they are giving, they are teaching them proper way. Not that you have to play only the cricket, all sports you can play, and whichever sports you are liking, you are enjoying, that you can continue. Thank you, Mr. Roy, for giving your opinions and giving the comparison, what is the difference between India and other countries as far as the sports are concerned. Now I would like to go to our next guest. He is Mr. Grant Wade Jensen. Mr. Jensen is provincial cricketer and coach, lives in Cape Town, South Africa. He is also the multiple Ironman finisher. He worked for 20 years as director of sports at both public and independent schools across South Africa. Currently, he is the CEO of the Chakla Foundation, a non-profit company to assist underprivileged sports people and create a platform to gain access to support and opportunities. He has completed over 50 marathons from 1993 till now, including international marathons, Berlin, London, New York, Helsinki, Gold Coast, Brussels, and Athens. He has also completed 9 Two Oceans Ultra Marathons, 56 kilometers, and 1 Comrades Marathon, 90 kilometers. He has completed 2 full Ironman Africa Championships and several other Ironman events from 2017 till date. He is a national level cricket coach, coached several teams over the years, including clubs, schools, and provincial academies. He has coached several sports over the years, such as hockey, water polo, football, rugby, track, and field. He is currently coaching elite marathon runners through the Chakla Foundation program. Welcome, Mr. Jensen, to our show. Mr. Jensen, you have heard what Professor Dr. P. Subramania, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University, said, what Wing Commander Arjit Ghosh mentioned, and as well as what Mr. Satik Roy has said. And according to all of three, the new education policy in India is giving more emphasis for the sports. And what Mr. Wing Commander Ghosh says, that he wants that sports to be given more importance, not only as a subject, but total activity, so that the student can be the child can become a mentally as well as physically healthy, and can become a very good citizens in future. Mr. Roy has given the description about the, he has mentioned about the difference between Indian sports education as well as the Australian education of the sports. And sports and physical education and sports, although you are from South Africa, but you can mention the details about in your country, the physical education and sports. Mr. Jensen, please.
Thank you. Yes, some really insightful views on sport, and really a delight to be part of this discussion. Despite me sitting in Cape Town, South Africa at the moment, we clearly also have a lot in common. Firstly, we are also a cricket-mad country, so I'm hoping that I'm not going to give you too many tips so that you beat us in the next cricket series. I have to just tell you what the Indian government is doing in terms of implementing the new education policy is very encouraging. In South Africa, prior to 1996, physical education was a standalone subject. But then in 1996, it was integrated into the life orientation program. And with that, sadly, it took away a lot of the specialist physical education people out of the system. And with the result today, we find that physical education is really quite a hidden subject, occupying a small space. It's not taught by experts, people who really understand the intricacy and the benefits of physical education. And I think the way one needs to view physical education is no different to mathematics, if I can use that as an example. Mathematics teaches you to problem solve. It teaches you to understand concepts. Within a mathematics program, you'd need to do teamwork. You'd need to fight through certain challenges, and sport is no different. Sport teaches you the teamwork. It teaches you to problem solve. It teaches you to think on your feet and able to make very quick decisions under pressure. And it would really be an opportunity missed if I didn't remind all of us who have been big supporters of the global icon Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela said that sport has the ability to change the world. It has the ability to inspire. And I think the key thing with that message is that one then needs to understand exactly what it is you want to achieve with sport. Are you going to use it as a vehicle to develop better citizens? If so, you need the right people to do that. We talk about our education standards that are slipping. And I'm sure in Australia, Mr. Roy would say that his program only works well if he's got the best coaches, the best people to understand what it is to keep the youngsters inspired. Sadly, when you look at the stats in America, 70% of kids who start off playing school sport, by the time they get to high school, 70% of them have dropped out. And what are the reasons for the dropout? Poor coaching, massive pressure to succeed, massive pressure to, through sport, obtain scholarships into colleges, into universities. In South Africa, we also have a situation where not everyone has access to top education. So there is so much pressure on people to get into provincial teams at a young age. And that really places an extra burden on the athletes. The pressure comes not only from the schools, the parents, and then of course, as athletes, you place that pressure on yourself. So it really is important that when it's one thing having the policy in place, it's another thing to know that that policy can actually be put into effect. And when we look at countries like South Africa and India, where we have a massive divide between rich and poor, you can almost start saying that, you know, a lot of that policy will work in the affluent schools, in our fee-paying state schools, or in our private schools. But is it really happening for the masses? And so with that, the conscience of our governments is important. We need to direct resource in that direction. If that is what we are saying, we really need to put the money behind it. We need to put the experts behind it. We need to ensure that our training colleges are actually churning out those experts, and that it's not just left to someone as a filler to ensure that that part of the curriculum is addressed. So another very key person I'd like to quote is Professor Tim Noakes. He's in South Africa, is one of the gurus in terms of sports science. And I'll never forget him once speaking to a packed crowd of parents, teachers, and learners. And he said to them, you know, I cannot say for sure that any of you youngsters sitting there, and it must have been about 800 of them, I cannot say for sure that any of you are going to be professional sports people. But what I can say for sure is that sitting amongst me now are future lawyers, future doctors, future accountants. And when you look at that then, and going back to Arjit's point, which I like very much, is that when you look at sport and sport is used in the right way, it is a powerful, powerful way to develop all those professionals. And whilst it's always a temptation, especially in modern day when you have your IPLs and all these other professional sports coming up, it's very tempting to start saying, well, let's start developing these youngsters younger and younger, because that will ensure success. And then one has to be very careful with that, because as much as sport can build people up, sport can also break you down if not managed correctly. And this is why I'm also very delighted to hear what the professor had to say about play. Play in itself, and that's without any competition, just simply playing. Youngsters enjoy that. I have to just break this little bit of news. My son has recently gone back to school under the COVID conditions. You know, they're quite strict in terms of social distancing and so on. But I hope this is not going to get him into any trouble. But quietly after school, him and his friends found ways to play some basketball or football. And it's almost become the highlight during COVID-19. It's not so much going to school, but it's a time that they spend after school to engage with one another. And that's the value of what sport brings. It is a massive opportunity for kids to socialize, for kids to learn to understand one another, to develop relationships. And you cannot place value on that. And that's why it's important when looking at this topic, we really unpack all the benefits, understand all the expertise that we require to get to maximize the benefit to the individuals.
Okay, yes, thank you, Mr. Jensen. First of all, I should give thanks to you that you have studied the National New Education Policy of 2020, and you have quoted and you said very clearly that you agreed with Professor Dr. P. Subramanian and other speakers, and you said that the policy is very good as far as the physical education and sports are concerned. Only your worry is that it should be implemented properly. Then you have mentioned about late Nelson Mandela's quote, which you said that he has mentioned that sports can change the world. And you also give an example of a sports guru who was speaking in a program of where about 800 people were attending, and he said very clearly, I can see you, the future of you as a doctor, engineer, chartered accountant, etc. But you should understand that sports can change and can even better your lives, even whatsoever field you are. And according to you, according to Mr. Jensen, the sports can definitely make a person more mentally sound, physically sound, and he has and he says that sports is for the fun. He has given the example of his son who is after this COVID, because of the COVID-19, the schools and colleges were shut. Now because they are open, so now when he started going there, they have found the way how to play basketball, and that way, and they are enjoying. So according to him, the sports, the advantage is the happiness, the playing, and the mental and physical one can grow in a very big way. Thank you, Mr. Jensen, for giving your frank views about the physical education and sports, and you have also quoted our NEP 2020. Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. P. Subramania. Dr. P. Subramania, you have mentioned about the NEP. Now I would like a specific answer from you. What are positives and negatives of the NEP when it comes to sports? Dr. P. Subramania, please.
Not a here.
Yeah, sorry.
Sound, please.
Shall I say? Yeah, my question is, what are positives and negatives of the NEP when it comes to sports? Can you hear me? Dr. Subramania, can you hear me?
Not audible.
Not audible. Okay. Sorry, can you hear me? No. Okay, I will go to the next panelist till you will fix up your this thing.
You please go to others.
Yes, yes. Professor Wing Commander Aljit Ghosh, can you hear me? Please unmute.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Now my question to you is, has the 1986 education policy achieved any positive in sports education? And whether you have actually seen the uses of sports as a life skill development tool?
Yes, absolutely. Any sports policy would have some positive benefits, that's for sure, because the moment you recognize that sports is something which needs to be given importance and made a part of the curriculum, whether it is as an extracurricular activity or whether it is a part of the curriculum itself, there are bound to be positives out of that. So even the 1986 policy would have achieved a lot of positives out of it. And as far as seeing the the effects of sports on young children, on the development of young children, after I took premature retirement from the Indian Air Force in 2010, I worked as the chief operating officer of a boarding school, which also had a sports academy within the school, and we had excellent sports facilities. Now, which brings me to the point which Grant made here, that we were one school which had a lot of facilities, we had 36 trained coaches, sports coaches in the school as part of the staff. And we had this Academy of Sporting Excellence within the school where children could actually, learn how to play a sport right from their formative years. So we were actually different from other schools in that sense. And not obviously many schools in India would have those kind of facilities. But having said that, the effect that sports had on young children, that remained the same. That won't change, because in the school that I was at that point of time, children came from affluent backgrounds who had not, no one in their families had ever played sport. They were basically not sports people at all. And they didn't have a sports culture in their running in their families. So to actually make children from such backgrounds to come to the grounds, to sweat, to do the physical fitness that is required to play sport at any level, that itself was a huge challenge. But once again, going back to what Satvik said, that you need your best teachers and best coaches at every level to interest the children in sport, to basically make them fall in love with sport. And I won't restrict myself only to sports in this particular example. I would say that if you can make a child fall in love with a subject, or with academics, with reading, with writing, whatever it is something which is a great service that you've done to that child, and it stays with him for life. And so the same kind of thing happened with us at that school, with many young children who actually fell in love with playing sport, even though not many people in their families were familiar with sport. They're not, leave alone having played it at any level. So they went through that grind. They happily came to the sports grounds, and we built sports teams. And because we were able to take teams out for competitions and all that, it led to a lot of healthy competition within the students to get into the school teams, to be a part of playing tournaments, even playing tournaments overseas, and all of that. And all of that actually contributed to their personalities. It all contributed to the kind of people that they actually became later in life. So if I give a specific example, there was a cricket tournament that we went to play in Greece. Now, we had gone there once earlier, and we felt that we had the potential to win this tournament the next year. We had lost in the semifinals the previous year. we had actually lost to a team from Pakistan. So that made us even more determined to go back the next year and win the championship. So the next year we gave this as a target to our children. And the tournament happened during a school vacation. So we were at a boarding school where children are in any case away from the families for almost a good 10 months in a year. Now we were asking them to give up a part of their vacation to be part of that cricket team, which was to go and play that tournament. And all of them happily agreed to do that. And not only them, credit to their parents, they agreed to that as well. And then for a period of a month or so, we worked with these children, the coaches worked with these children, taught them different kinds of things that they needed to learn to succeed at that tournament. The target goal was obviously to go and win and do well in that tournament. But we broke it down into smaller goals every day. Like we would have a daily goal of, say, if you were doing a fielding session, you wanted them to hit the stumps directly with their throws. Or if you wanted them to hit in the air, learn to hit in the air, because this was a T20 tournament that we were playing. So obviously we needed to score quickly. We needed to learn them to hit the ball into the gaps. We needed to learn them to run quick singles. So all of those were daily goals which we would work on for a period of a month. So what these children realized was that you have a target goal and then you have a process goal, which is a daily goal, which you work on a daily basis. And the consolidation of those process goals, those daily goals, if you do it well, could finally lead you to achieving the target goal that you've set for yourself. So that's a very powerful education if you see in terms of life. If you see that later on these people would go into business or become CEOs of companies or whatever it is, they would look at achieving their goals exactly in this process. They would break the main target goal down into smaller goals, work on those goals on a daily basis without really looking at the target goal. And then when they actually get into that situation where they need to perform and put it all together, they are in a position to do so. So that's a very powerful education that these students learned from us. And I'm happy to say that we went there and we actually, Grant was there with a team from South Africa, and we actually won that tournament. So that, and we got our prize from the Indian High Commissioner to South Africa and to Greece, and the South African ambassador was also there. So it was a great privilege for the children. Just imagine the kind of life education that it would have imparted to these children to have been a part of a process like that and to have gone to a situation. These are 16, 17-year-old boys that I'm talking about, and to have gone into a situation like that and done well in life. And the amount of confidence, the amount of team spirit that they learned from that exercise, I think that would remain with them for the rest of their lives in whatever they do. And that, in my opinion, is the biggest plus or the positive that you can derive out of playing sports at any level.
Okay, thank you, Wing Commander Ghosh, for giving the details. And according to you, the 1986 education policy, yes, it has also achieved something. Any policies which are coming and which are giving importance to sports definitely achieve something. But how much it achieves, that we have to see ourselves, and that's why the new education policy have come. Now, he has also mentioned about the life skills, and he says that which he has narrated one incident, but he says the main thing is that instead of going for a target, you just divide the target in the sub-targets, and then let them work for those small targets. And once they will achieve, definitely the big target, the ultimate target will also be achieved, which will be in turn, once the children will learn all these things in sports, tomorrow they can be a very, very successful person in their life, whether a businessman or any professional. Thank you very much, Wing Commander Ghosh, for giving the reply. Now, again, I'm asking, coming to our Honorable Vice Chancellor. Can you hear me, Vice Chancellor?
Yeah. Now I can read.
Okay, so my question to you is, what are positives and negatives of this? Again, you lost. Okay, so again, now I'm going to, you have lost again. Okay,
no, break is there.
Break is there. I think some problem is there in the connection. I'm going to Mr. Roy. No, we can't hear you now. So I'm going to Mr. Roy, Mr. Satik Roy. you have heard what Wing Commander Ajit Ghosh has said, and even all our panelists, and even you. Don't you think, because although you are now staying abroad in Australia, but being an Indian and you were in India, don't you think the government should set up sports academies on the lines of IITs and IIMs? Today, as Wing Commander has mentioned, and you all have mentioned, that the education, what is the purpose of education? Purpose of the education is to make a person independent, a right thinking person. When sports can give us all those quality, why not we have an IIT or IIM like an sports academy across the country, not one or two in Patiala or somewhere, across the countries, and their education, the sports will be giving the more importance, but yeah, definitely other subjects will be teaching, like what we are doing nowadays, that all subjects are giving importance and the sports is one of the very less important subject. But these academies on the line of IITs and IIMs set up by the government or the private concerned, approved by the government, on that level, then only Indian future from all the aspects, not only playing sports, but a man building or the career will be there. Like Mr. Jensen mentioned, now we are playing in IPL. That is also a very big career opportunity. What do you think about this, Mr. Roy?
Mr. Goel, what you said is quite good. There's no doubt about it. But see, I have been working on this for the last 4 to 5 years in terms of implementing, sports and sports related activities all across India. See, in 2015, 2016, I was part of a trade delegation which went from South Australia to Rajasthan. At that point of time, I wasn't part of the Root Academy, but I was part of an Australian academy. And with me, I have worked with some ex-Australian and current Australian players as well. See, I think I have jotted some points down, and this is my humble opinion. People can agree, disagree. First of all, as you said, yes, we must have specified centers, like the IIT, IIMs. We definitely must, but it's important for us to know what happens in those centers. The first step that the government, if they are serious enough, they need to take is an approach of train the trainers. The reason being is, if you don't have quality coaches, quality sportsmen, they will not be able to transfer that knowledge to the young kids. Because of the population of India, it's an advantage and a disadvantage as well. The biggest advantage is you've got such a big population, so resources, talent, there's no scarcity of that. The biggest disadvantage of Australia, in a way, is the population. Population is so less that sometimes, we've got facilities, we've got tennis courts, we've got massive, huge grounds, ovals, but there are very few people who are playing on that. It's because of population. Now it's time for the Indian government to utilize this advantage of population and make most of it. So the first step that they need to do is train the trainer model. So they need to identify trainers, coaches, not just the cricket aspect, all kind of sports. They need to identify these coaches at one go and give them specified programs where they can train young players coming into the system. Now, another thing, what we noticed, and this is a study that we did in 2016. So I actually took one of our high level, level 3 Australian coaches to India to observe that the difference between coaching in India and the coaching in Australia and England. And I told him that, tell me, what is the biggest takeaway that you have from this experience? He said, the first thing what I notice is, the coaching that happens, it's a command based coaching. It's a directive principle coaching. The coaches tell the coaches or the young players what to do, where to do, what's the mistake. What we have to do is we have to have an experiential form of learning. What I mean by that is that we give the kids the liberty to play their own game and even give them tools so they actually understand what mistakes they are making and what good things they are doing. Again, focus on the positives. The first thing what we do is, when a young kid comes to us, the first thing they tell us is that, tell me what is wrong with me. Let's go the other way and say, tell us what is right with you. See, I have got enough research available to to inform you that it's parents also who have to take a very, very important role. We've had parents who've said that, okay, I will invest in my child's career, but I don't want to invest in sports, because if I invest in sports, where is the return? you know if we have to look at the return, not in terms of the just the career goal, but as a person. I'll just conclude with just one experience I have had almost 7 to 8 years back, when I was part of another cricket academy. We had Mike Gatting, who was the chief of ECB, send us some of their top players, to the academy, so we could train them, play with them. So I asked Mr. Gatting that, tell us, what is the most important aspect that we should focus on? Should it be on fielding, batting, strength and conditioning? He said, hold on, Satyak, just hold on. Let me interrupt. He said, the most important thing I want you to tell me is that how are they in terms of their mental ability and off-field behavior. Sports is great, they will play, but I want to know what is their holistic behavior. We want to know on-field behavior, off-field behavior. We want to know how active they are outside the game, outside what is their behavior like. So even 6 to 7 years back, when they are sending these young boys for a training program, an organized training program, Mike Gatting said that I want a holistic report which states that not only in sports, but his overall 360-degree behavior, how is the boy doing? Based on that, we will take them in our county matches. So my opinion is that it's time for all of us, again, as Indian representatives, parents, kids, teachers, to look at a holistic form of development, and to give an opportunity to the kids for them to learn experientially, rather than a directive command which we say that this is right, that is right, that is not right, that is wrong. So I think, in my opinion, this we need to have a mindset change as far as development of sports is concerned.
According to Mr. Roy, the mindset change for the approach of the sports in India, and he agreed. He says, yes, like IIMs and IITs, we should also have the specialized institutions in India. But the only thing is, the difference in India is that here we are we are dictating, the coaches are dictating how to do it. But Mr. Roy, if you read the education policy of India, the new one, it is, I think Professor Dr. Subramania will vouch for me, that it says the difference is, earlier it was what to think. Now the thing is how to think. In this education policy, it means very clearly that the approach has been changed. Even for the students or the children, that they have to decide what they want to think. Not that the teachers or the academicians will say, no, this you have to think. So how to think. Now, Vice Chancellor, can you listen us? What are the positives and negatives of the National Education Policy 2020 when it comes to sports? And how does NEP attracts investment in sports education? Professor Subramania, please.
It is only policy that should be born in our mind. Then whenever there is a policy, people approach it only as a policy. The point is, commitment is required. It is not just political commitment or bureaucratic commitment. We have seen such policy postulates have aborted before their birth for want of what you call a kind of environment. Never put the cart before the horse. That should be understood. Many of the proposals were thrown in the past due to lack of political will, partly due to lack of bureaucratic will. What we require to is national will, because we cannot hang on to the yesteryears for putting the sport education to the back burner. Therefore, the entire idea of National Education Policy 2020 is we must be able to unlock and unleash the potential within every student, right from the school system to the higher education. From that point of view, mindset is another important barrier for all of us. We have to change the mindset of people, not only the teachers or the students, their parents, all bureaucrats and politicians, because undoubtedly what we require providing physical education both inside and outside of schools is crucial, helping young people to learn and develop life skills. No doubt about it. And this physical education and sports outside four walls will definitely contribute positively to academic outcomes, classroom behavior, and attendance levels. So this is one of the ways if we invest a huge amount of time, energy, and resources in physical education and sport activities, definitely will pay rich dividends in the long run.
Okay, thank you very much,
Yes.
Professor Dr. Subramania, although there was some
That is
problem
my
as far as your voice is concerned, but no problem. You have made your point very clearly. Now, my last question comes to Mr. Jensen. Mr. Jensen, how you see India's future in sports? You have heard everyone, and everyone has given their opinions, and you have studied new National Education Policy 2020. Now, we want to know from you how you see India's future in sports. Please unmute.
I think the point that I raised earlier about sports' ability to inspire is something that that really works for India. I do remember South Africa's first international match after our isolation was against India in 1991. And the one thing that actually stood out for me, even though South Africa weren't quite up to the standard, the South African players really had good skills, were exceptional fielders, if many of you can remember. And compared to India at the time, I thought India were great players, but the fielding was so lacking. And when you now look at the Indian cricket team, it's probably one of the best fielding teams in the world. And I think because you have such wonderful role models, you've had Sachin Tendulkar, superb athlete, could throw the ball left and right. You now have Virat Kohli, you had Mahendra Singh Dhoni, superb athletes, and then they could bat, and then they could think, and then they could do to execute their skills. So when you look at how the game of cricket in itself has transformed, and also I think it's the exposure that the IPL has brought, where international players have come to the fore and inspired the young Indian players. It has just created a wide pool of high quality players. Your difficulty, I would say, is that cricket is such a massive sport in India, and the resource clearly is going into that sport. Your big challenge is now, if you want to start earning Olympic medals, athletics championship medals, the priorities need to shift. So not only would your education policy be what it is, it needs to be supported by the financial resources, putting the right equipment in place, putting, as Mr. Roy says, the right coaches in place. That is what's going to cause the shift. The policy on its own is not going to do it without that big cash injection. And then I think what one also needs to do, because in terms of schooling, it is fine to spread the net wide and tell kids that they need to play as many sports as possible in junior school, and maybe start doing a little bit of more specialization in the high school years. But as a nation, it is not possible especially in our developing countries, it is not possible for us to throw that net so wide to 20, 25 different sports. We need to look at priority sports and then look at what's required and build on plans, so that you can develop those sports in a structured way. But it takes a long time. And it's quite clear. You look at Australia, when they hosted the 2000 Olympics, they looked at it quite scientifically, and they said, well, the amount of investment we place in sport will convert to the number of medals that we achieve. And that's exactly what they did, and they had that outcome. The minute, I mean, I'm not sure what the Indian government's budget is when it comes to Olympics, but you need to put mega millions of US dollars into achieving one medal. Without that investment, it won't happen. But again, when we're talking about sport, I think it is really important. Sport in schools, we should not lose the focus that sport is used as a tool to develop an individual. Whether he or she is going to play for India one day, win an Olympic medal, that is neither here nor there. And in fact, if that is going to be your aim, you're going to fall way short. You have a population of 1 billion people. They are very, I mean, it's not, I cannot even give you a number of people who are eventually going to make it out of your massive population. But like I said before, the words of Professor Tim Noakes, India, you will have doctors. India, you will have lawyers. You will have accountants. Use sport as a way to grow, make sure that it can help you have the most resilient population, the most creative thinkers, the most on the feet thinkers, ability to adjust. And you look at one of the biggest challenges we have at the moment through COVID-19 is that the kids aren't playing. The kids aren't playing. You are now forced to sit at the computer, and trust me, the kids are actually quite enjoying this computer. And that is a big threat. In fact, the biggest global sport now is probably e-games. Internet sport is going to become the next big sport, whether we like that or not. So that makes it even more of a reason why the NEP is critical. And it's critical that governments understand the deeper investments that we need to make to get the results. Otherwise, we're going to sit with populations that are unhealthy, that lack all the other skills that sport would bring. The relationships, the socialization, those are key parts of being. And COVID-19, in a way, is starting to deprive us of those experiences. And it would be quite interesting. We were just chatting the other day about, we'd like to see the impact of COVID-19 on young children, on kids that have been born in this time. Kids who have had the good fortune possibly now to spend their first 3, 4, 5 months only with their parents, only looking at them. But another thing that someone mentioned the other day was the youngsters today, or the babies today, are starting to see people with masks. And the human interaction is so key in our development as people. And so it looks like the NEP will have to look at all these other threats that we are dealing with in the world today. And it just shows that we need to be agile. We need to be agile in our thinking. We need to know where to invest. And we need to always think ahead. And that
Yeah.
is all the things that sport teaches us, mind you.
Okay, sports teaches us how to be ahead, think ahead of others, says Mr. Jensen. And Mr. Jensen mentioned that yes, NEP is very good. Only thing is required cash investment, a huge investment, if they really want and they are serious to develop the physical education and sports in a big way in India. The future is very good because of the population and the great players are there, thinkers are there. Only thing is they require lots of resources. Thank you, Mr. Jensen, for giving your views. Now we have a very, because of the paucity of time, only I will give few seconds to all of you to give your any suggestions to the government or advice to public, although you have already given. I will start from Vice Chancellor, Dr. P. Subramania, please. Please brief, be brief.
Yeah, only thing is the implementation. Everything depends on the execution excellence. Because C is one thing, implementation is a different thing. Therefore, if the government becomes successful, government alone cannot become successful. It's a collective responsibility of each and every stakeholder, so that it is a collective responsibility to make things happen, to translate the policy postulates into real life solutions. That is what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor, Dr. P. Subramania. Yes, Wing Commander Aljit Ghosh, your advice and suggestion, if any.
I have just one thing to say, which I said right at the beginning, that let's look at sports as a personality building tool, as a character shaping tool, and not simply as another subject in the curriculum. That would be my advice to the government. And please incorporate that into the National Education Policy 2020. It is not there right now.
Okay.
That's the only thing that I want to say.
Okay, thank you, Wing Commander Ghosh, for giving your advice and suggestion to the government. Yes, Mr. Roy.
Yes, like I had said, I'll just summarize very quickly. We need to have a model which will have train the trainers, and at the same time, the policies has to be such that they are learning and process based, not result based. Parents also must get up and understand that this is not an investment in an immediate career, but a long term career which will make them better people and more confident people at the end of the day. And finally, I just want to give this example that we must have multiple sports, and this is a true fact. You've heard of Steve Baugh and Mark Baugh. They never started their careers playing cricket. They were actually tennis players. And after some time, when they felt that what is my next option, they went for cricket. Similarly, Shane Warne, he was actually a footy player. Like he used to play rugby, Australian footy. After 5 years playing the game, he shifted to cricket because he had played cricket as another option. So I feel let's play multiple sports and let's make India better.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Roy, for giving this advice for training the trainers. But in the new education policy, the emphasis is there even to train the teachers, and I'm sure that sports trainers will also come under that. Thank you very much for giving your views, suggestions. Now, Mr. Jensen, be brief, please. It's because of the paucity of time. Any suggestion to the public at large or the government? Anything? Please unmute.
Yeah, I think I simply want to quote Mark Twain when he says, "Don't let your boy's schooling interfere with his education." And with that, I think education needs to be fun. Education needs to be enjoyed, and it shouldn't be too organized, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Our education should be fun, and which is covered in this new education policy. So today you have seen how these experts in the field of education, in the field of sports, not only from India, across the board or globally, they have mentioned very clearly, yes, the new education national policy 2020 is very good. Only thing is that it's proper implementation, the resources, and how to give the maximum fun to the students. And today's program, I'm sure, will be very, very beneficial for all the students or the parents, even good suggestions to the government. Today's program, which has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring to you the current and topics every day. That tomorrow we are going to discuss the COVID-19 impact on litigants. Yes, the litigants who are there, their cases are pending, but because of the COVID-19 lockdown, only the urgent hearings are taking place. And our guests are Advocate Deepak Dhingra, Law Linkers and Company, New Delhi, Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma, Mathura. We have the litigant, Mr. Pawan Chaturvedi, Managing Director, Bridge, Bihar Group and Uma Motors, Mathura. And we have Mr. Inder Chand Jain, Chairman, Anupam Housing Group, Agra. So our aim is to bring the topics which are not being touched by the media at all. And one more thing which the Gyan has started now, Gyan presents healthy, tasty, easy recipes. No sugar, no oil. Yes, it's again a healthy thing only, by Ruby and Ranu. Learn to cook 3 vegetarian yummy healthy dishes for just rupees 200. Cooking classes on Zoom on Saturday, 29th August 2020 at 3:30 p.m. For details, please contact 990-172-8861. I repeat, 990-172-8861. Thank you very much, all my guests, Professor Dr. P. Subramania, the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Mangalore University, Wing Commander Ajit Ghosh, Mr. Satik Roy, and Mr. Grant Jensen for joining us and giving the very, very important and valuable your expert opinions about the physical education and sports in NEP 2020. Thank you all the viewers to be with us, and please tune in tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for the media conference with Lal Goyal at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much.